What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of BHR. This is Paul.
This is Patrick.
I hope everyone's week has been going well. This week has been not quite as eventful as past weeks, but that we'll take that as a good thing because normally, or lately, we've been reporting on heroin overdoses and whatnot in our area. So that's.
It seems like the only stories that are big enough to talk about have all been super negative the last few months.
Right. But and we're not exactly kicking this off with positive news, but last week we talked to you guys about the teachers' pay raise, and I believe that was actually denied over this last week. So the teachers will not be getting a raise, and that's just kind of sad. I mean, if our city's so broke, where did all of the money go? I mean,
Well, and they're not really clear as to if it's the whole city or if it's just the education side of it.
Well, one thing that kind of correlates with that is there won't be a firework display this year, to the best of my understanding. I mean, and like that's been a tradition in our city since I was born. So, I mean, at minimum 28 years. And
I mean, I know fireworks aren't cheap, but I can't imagine just doing once a year is extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. I mean, professional grade fireworks definitely are more expensive than just going to your little, shops and whatever and buying a bunch of artillery shells. But
maybe and it's kind of weird that they're getting rid of things that were like fundamental or like, just massive components of our town. Like, I mean, like that, like, yeah, it's a small deal, that firework display, but if they're willing to get rid of these parts that have been around for so long that brought our community together, maybe it's a sign that our local government has overextended itself.
And I just don't think they care about the people.
Well, like,
because I mean, they're getting rid of things like not giving teachers pay raises is frustrating because they're very important to the community. Right. And then now you're taking away community events.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then they haven't opened up the outdoor pool for I don't know how many years.
Well, that was to funnel people into the Arc. They closed the outdoor pool and they closed the one right next to the Bakken Elementary.
Right. Yep. And it was cheaper to swim at those places, so they're just trying to generate more money for the Arc.
I think the issue with the one at the old high school, I believe there was a lot of maintenance that needed to be done to it, and I think it was quite expensive. So that one I understand.
Yeah.
I'm not sure 100% about the outdoor pool, but to my understanding, it was to kind of funnel people towards the Arc.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but it's just kind of messed up that our city is doing that type of thing, and I'm a firm believer that they have overextended, although they warned themselves many times against that during the oil boom, that they weren't going to overextend our infrastructure or anything like that. And now we're starting to see, they still did.
Well, the thing that I don't want to go into too much detail about the construction part of it because we've beat that a few times now.
Right.
But did Main Street really need to be redone?
Right. Yeah.
With the amount of money that was spent on that, I just feel like it was extremely unnecessary, and now we're running into these budgetary issues.
Right.
I know I said last week that did we really need the new high school? There's more of an argument there for that than there is for redoing the downtown Main Street, especially when you have so many new businesses going up in other areas of town trying to make those areas the new main hub to go shopping.
Yep.
I can't see the justification behind doing it.
Right, and like people have to recognize that this also it correlates still back to our taxes that we pay. So like our sales taxes go to our city, or a portion of our sales taxes do, and it's their responsibility to use this money. And I don't believe that they've been really that justified in their spending.
Well, and with you bringing it up to sales tax, we've brought up a couple times now about them trying to maintain that one. Not 1%, but that extra cent sales tax.
Yep, that vote should be coming up. I don't know when, but
I thought you said it was like October, or August, or something like that.
Yep.
But it doesn't make me want to give them that.
No.
If obviously they need the money at this point, and maybe that's why they're trying to maintain that tax. But where's this money going to go? If all it's doing is balancing the budget.
Well, and so that money was supposed to that 1% percent that they want to maintain is supposed to go towards like offsetting the cost of road maintenance. And the other day while I was driving around, I live on the west side of Williston. The other day when I was driving around, I started to kind of look at the sidewalks, and if you drive down my street, the curbs, everything, like there's entire blocks that are almost missing curbs on one street. So it's like, so we've been paying the sales tax for so many years, so many people, anybody that comes to Williston pays this sales tax, and are they actually utilizing this money? I mean, what is going on? I believe that if anything, I think we definitely now more than ever should audit our city government.
And that's was going to be my next talking point is I think we really need to look into the infrastructure of our local government and find out what's going on because things aren't adding up. Right.
And it'll be interesting to see if anything like that will ever happen. I highly doubt that it will because it seems like I'd be very surprised to see those books open up and have people really peek into it. You know,
how would you even go about enforcing something like that?
Right,
on a community level.
Right.
How do you get the attention you need to have them looked into?
Really, what it is that we just need to find an accountant, and everything else should be public record. So if somebody that's pretty decent with numbers actually just goes in there and starts to analyze it, they cannot deny you access to looking at the books of our city. So, you know, maybe that's something for me to do this next week. We'll see. But another really, really big thing kind of in national news is the healthcare bill. The healthcare bill already made it through the House of Representatives, and now the vote in Senate is going to be coming up soon, which that should be interesting. There's a lot of talk that there's not enough of a Republican backing to get the vote necessary for it. So it's going to get stalled out again. There's going to be expect a lot of drama in this coming week from news on healthcare bill and changes to it and all of that. Maybe there might be another press covfefe that didn't happen or does happen. But this new healthcare bill, I believe it's going to even get more conservative by the time it passes through Senate, which, depending on what political party you're associated with, there's pros and cons to it. But it is kind of interesting how once government gets involved, how much that really affects your life. So you remember what it was like before Obamacare, right, Patrick?
Yeah, I honestly didn't have a problem with healthcare prior to that. I guess I've never, been unemployed or been in a situation where I didn't get it. I've always had it provided through my job.
Right.
But Obamacare really screwed a lot of that up.
Yeah.
Because once that went into effect, every year now, my prices for health insurance have gone up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the same case for me while I was in the oil industry. As Obamacare was coming in, my health insurance just kind of skyrocketed during that time period. And it's just messed up. I mean, as soon as the government kind of gets its fingers involved in something, things really start to go haywire, it seems like. I mean, we can see that with the education system when you kind of date it back to when the government really started to push the subsidized loans, really started to push Pell Grants, really started to push all of the different aspects of education. That's when you started to see this hyperinflation get involved, even in the education sector. So the health sector totally messed up from the government getting involved. The education sector totally getting messed up from the government getting involved. And when I say that as far as the education system, that's the national government getting involved in it. I mean, my dad, my tuition this coming year will be in the ballpark of $14,000. Mm-hmm. My dad paid about $600 for his tuition for a year at one of the other major schools in North Dakota. I mean, and when you look at like the inflation rate during that time period, or from inflation rate from that time period to now, it should have only been 5 to 6 times the natural inflation. So like then you're looking at 1,500, 2,000, or just not even comparable. And it's it's sad. I mean, it's messed up that we see government get involved in things, and then it just seems to mess things up more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And there's no way to backtrack it. And I think that's one thing that the Republicans are trying to do in this healthcare bill or the hardcore Republicans are trying to really backtrack government involvement, and I don't think that's actually even going to be possible.
Well, what I don't understand is why do we need another bill? Why can't we just repeal what's in place and go back to the way things were?
That it might just turn into a bigger shit show, though. Like it's like so. Another type, like, I mean, not to kind of dodge that concept, right? But another thing that they've been heavily involved with is Social Security, right? So Social Security, the concept behind it is a good idea, right? Like, I mean, where everybody kind of chips in a little bit of money and it will pay for your retirement in a sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a very social program. It's not a terrible, terrible idea.
But that money continues to get borrowed to fund other projects.
Exactly. So instead of actually utilizing it for what it's meant for, they've overextended, even on the national level. The government is overextended, spent unwisely, trusted people that should not be trusted. And what we've seen is the system start to break. And who knows if Social Security will be there when we get into that age range, you know?
Yeah, and that's something I've always been told since I was very little, is that Social Security is not going to be there when I need it.
Right. You should definitely have your own 401k and everything like that. I mean, 401ks they're very beneficial, and it's your own money. You get to kind of choose where you put it. It's definitely not a social program. It's your money, your options, and your retirement. And the concept behind that, I mean, like, should the government actually be responsible paying for your retirement? And I mean, with how government gets involved with anything, it's just messed up. Another example of it is in 1945, our economy kind of actually changed. So back in prior to 1945, the government really didn't have a lot of influence in the economy. It was called what was like the unseen or invisible hand that kind of controlled how, like, the peaks and valleys of our economy. But right at the end of World War II, we went into another system, and you can actually even look this up. A single person kind of developed this economic system that we adopted, and the government or the Federal Reserve can regulate interest rates in banks and actually control the economy. So, like, just to kind of go off on a little ADD tangent there, it's kind of ridiculous when you blame or give success to the different presidents for creating jobs, when really it's based off more on what the Federal Reserve is doing with interest rates, and that's how our economy is being stimulated or brought down.
Yeah. But in a way, the president's actions can also influence that to an extent. So I can kind of see where you could make that.
Well, so technically the only jobs that the president can make are
government jobs.
Government jobs, exactly. That's it. One thing I did find interesting with Trump is how he kind of utilized his Twitter to whip, like how the party whips, that he would whip these companies into kind of making better deals with the government. So, like, I think one of them was Boeing. They were wanting to charge something in the ballpark of $1 billion for his, like, Air Force One service, and he made a comment on how that was ridiculous, and their stock plummeted, them losing way more than $1 billion almost within a day. And I mean, it's like
that kind of influence is it's good but scary at the same time, because you can do a lot of damage with that.
Right. But I mean, if you're keeping companies in check and making sure that they're giving the government the best deal and making it cheaper for the taxpayers, that's a good idea, I think.
I mean, I've never been in a position of like CEO or a high up position in a large company, but I think a lot of people's opinions towards government things is trying to get as much money as you can.
Right. Yeah. Well, and like that's one thing I really don't like. I don't like the concept of giving government more than what they need, right? But once you do give the government power in something, it is so incredibly hard to take it away. And we've kind of just grown used to having a very powerful government that takes a lot of our taxes and does whatever they see fit to do. And like, to me, that's just so fundamentally wrong for a government to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, especially if we are the ones that control the government. Like, from the bottom up, government is controlled from the people up. Or at least in theory.
In theory, that's how it's supposed to work.
That's how it's supposed to work. And what we've seen in our lifetime, and not like right around, actually pretty much almost all of it within our lifetime, is that really get pushed in the opposite direction really hard. I mean, up until 2001, things were starting to kind of trend back to being a little bit more stateside, more decisions being made for the states, by the states. And then 2001, 9/11 happened, and the states felt like they couldn't maintain their own security, so all of this power kind of shifted up to the national government.
But even that, I mean, just because of security issues, I don't think all of this other power should have shifted.
Right.
Like, obviously, if you need help securing your borders, I guess would be the appropriate term, then yeah, definitely look to the government. But you shouldn't be giving up more than what's necessary, to maintain that.
Yeah.
And I think that for the states to have lost as much power as they did is a little ridiculous.
I think I kind of want to make a claim here for this next week that the Republicans will not get the healthcare bill passed. I really don't think it's going to happen in Senate. And there's pros and cons to it. I honestly, I hope that what I would prefer is that the bill that was passed through Congress just to get fast tracked through Senate and passed and good to go, because it was there's certain aspects of it that are questionable, but it's not as bad as what I think the next version is going to be.
Well, that was going to be my thing, is I hope it doesn't pass, because I do think it needs work.
Yeah.
But you don't know, I guess, what the next steps are going to be after that.
Right. Like, despite what a lot of the mainstream media, their headlines were in this version of the healthcare bill, there was still certain aspects that helped out those with pre-existing conditions, which is like, I'm totally like, I'm okay with that idea to an extent. But when you consider, like, if your health is absolutely screwed, really bad, like, you can't insure a car that's been totaled. You can't fully insure a car that's been totaled, because it's no longer has that type of value. And like, I know, like, it's bad, and it seems
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
but you need to realize that the majority of the public does not see a machine versus a person as the same thing.
But see,
like, I understand from an economic standpoint. Yes, yeah. I get it.
Health insurance companies, they do look at you numerically, right? Like, they assess your risk. Same with life insurance, right? Mm-hmm. There's people there that are there to assess your risk and give you the best option that you possibly can have. So they would take into all different things into consideration and make, like, kind of a judgment call on your health care, what they could provide you. And people should have the right to life, but should everybody pay for your right to life? Well,
here's the thing. I have what would be considered a pre-existing condition, so I don't want to have to pay more just because I'm actually going to use my insurance.
Well, especially since you've been insured this whole time,
Well, right, and here's the thing too: is the people that don't have these conditions are still paying the same price.
Yeah.
So either if somebody doesn't use their insurance all the time, mm-hmm. then you need to lower it for them if you're going to look at it from that value.
Right.
You shouldn't be charging same across the board and then say, oh, you have an issue, let's charge you more.
Right. Yeah,
charge the people that aren't using their insurance less and make it more affordable for people like me that are using it.
See, and I think what's happened with Obamacare, because it is broken, right? Like the government is like, we're paying more to our health insurance providers. The government is losing money, right? Like they're dumping money into it. Attempting to kind of save the system.
Why would the government be dumping money into it?
Well, because it's government funded. Like, it's government funded health insurance. Like, like, yeah,
go through a regular insurance provider.
Right, though. Exactly. So like you need to kind of separate the two variables of your health insurance being increased due to Obamacare and everybody else's that like you don't know their health insurance and what they have, right? So like if you don't have health insurance, you pay a fine in your taxes depending on your income, the amount that you've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is super illegal.
Right. And it's like, oh, exactly, because then you go into mandatory health care.
Yes.
I
don't understand how that was able to be passed.
Yeah, that was
extremely illegal.
That was interesting. I mean, that the government passed a mandatory health insurance coverage, which even in some of the places that do have, very big social programs, they don't have it as necessarily mandatory. It's kind of like if you go to the hospital, it's free, but it's just very unusual.
I do understand probably the original reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
But you can't do it.
Right. You force people to pay taxes for something.
Yes.
But it should be interesting to see what comes out of all of this, right? Like, so when we do get to be in our 40s, 50s, 60s, like even if we're lucky enough to make it to 70s, what is going to take place by then? Like, because we have Social Security that's kind of messed up. I don't think that anything is going to really pass through on healthcare anytime soon. Like, it might take him, actually. I think it might take him a couple of years, but I'll be shocked if we get anything through.
Well, then Obamacare went back and forth for almost the entire first term.
No, he did get Obamacare passed in the first 100 days.
Really?
Yeah, that was like his big success because during that time, or I want to say it was his second term as president, his first 100 days. Because during that time period, I believe they had, I can't remember if it was first or second, but they had the majority in both the Senate and the House, and they were very comfortable. And then I think it was second term that they lost the majorities. But they passed that, and then that was about it. Like, as far as things getting done during his presidency, I'm surprised there wasn't a lot more of a social laws passed or social programs created. Because he could have, during that first 100 days, he could have went crazy with them, and he probably would have been able to pass all of them after President Bush. I mean, I really think, I don't like being a Debbie Downer, but I don't exactly have a positive outlook for the future of our government, and it just seems like the trend is continuing down and kind of bringing my idea and possibly a dystopian future into the possibilities,
Well, the thing that worries me, like beyond the point of it seems like the national government is gaining too much power, is how the government and like celebrity culture are kind of meshing together. Mm-hmm. It's starting to get to the point where now we're looking at all these politicians like they're celebrities.
Right.
Obviously, Trump would be like the forefront of this, but even, smaller politicians.
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was governor of California.
That, I guess, to me would almost be an exception because he was a celebrity first. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which I guess you can make that argument with Trump as well, because he had his TV series.
Yeah, very successful business prior to that. But another person, just to kind of maybe give some hope, possibly, to like future politicians, is that we did go through, like, there was Ronald Reagan, and he was an actor, and then he was the head of the Actors Guild, and then I think he became governor of California after that. But he was a very popular actor, and then got involved in politics. So I hope that the trend doesn't continue to where it's like pop stars getting involved, but they do have a lot of influence, but actually running for political office.
Right. It's just hard to say with how prominent liberal ideas have become in mainstream culture.
Right.
I definitely see that being something that'll happen in the near future.
Well, and I've had some discussions, with friends that are very, very social leaning, and like the concept of a conservative government, the concept of the republic kind of doesn't really even sit in their brain. They don't, like, when you say less government, they don't quite understand what that means, or changing power from national to state, why that would be a better thing. They just have no idea. Like, it's like they just think that the government does the best job, that they do so well. And really, like, time and time again, we see, just like what we were saying with local business and with national business, like you give them, or not local business, local government and national government, you give them the power, you give them the finances, and they overextend, they overspend, they miscalculate, and they hyperinflate things.
Well, and we've already given an example of a small government not being able to handle, their power and overextending. Yep. Imagine how it is when a national government starts overextending.
Right, exactly.
At least on the small level, it doesn't screw everybody. It screws the people in that area.
Yeah.
Whereas the national government's going to mess up the whole country.
Yep.
And that's why, to me, it makes more sense to have them have less power, leave it up to the state, let them screw up their state, and let everybody else prosper and help out if they need to, or have the national government step in.
Right. And see, and I'm very much so in the same boat. I like that idea of the state government, because if someone does start to mess up, you know who they are. You know, like, you really actually have an idea of who you're voting for if they're coming from your state.
I feel like it'd be harder for them to be dishonest to an extent, because it's such a smaller area. People know them, and you don't have national media covering them all the time. It's harder to have a cover up in a smaller setting,
right? And just the idea of less government, like, when you really think about, like, really think about how much the government affects your life, and prior to Obamacare changing your prices on your health insurance, I mean, I'm sure, like, some of the most involved you've been with federal government or with national government, actually federal government, is the mail service, right? I mean, like, there's certain aspects of our life that are going to be definitely affected by things that the national government does, and they're most likely going to be somewhat negative. But hopefully the whole system doesn't collapse. That's what I'm banking on. I mean, I don't want to see Social Security fail. I don't want to see whatever health care that we have fail.
Yeah, we don't want to see these things happen, but that's just the road we're going down.
It seems like it. It feels like that. The trend, it's trending in that direction. I know another big topic when it comes to government and politics is greenhouse gases, and doing environmentally friendly and energy. And it's like, I agree with those concepts, but it's also another type of aspect where it's like, should the government be getting involved in those kind of parts of science as well, dumping money, right? They're probably borrowing that money from Social Security anyways, and dumping it into alternative energies, which it's good to have alternative energies, but you also have to look at it from an efficiency standpoint. And I don't think that any of it is really being looked at on, like, a cost-benefit analysis when it comes to government on the national scale down to our local government here in Williston. I mean,
it just seems like nobody has any accountability anymore.
And that's a huge thing with, like, it seems, I absolutely agree. There is a lot of people out there, especially in government, that they don't have accountability for their actions in that office. At one point in time, there was consideration to where maybe it was even a part of the government, where if you really started to rack up debt as, like, for our government, you would be personally responsible for that debt. So, I mean, I'm sure if all of the politicians were personally responsible for the debt that they accumulate in their term of office, or some percentage of it, of our national debt, I'm sure you'd see a lot of bills change rather quickly. Like, I don't think anybody would be pork barreling any bills. They wouldn't be adding things into them, because they would be afraid that, if this actually doesn't function properly, I'm going to be in debt.
Well, and do you think in a way that would put roadblocks up for progress?
Not necessarily put roadblocks up for progress, but
because on the surface, I'm definitely all for that.
But, like, the excessive spending, the excessive mess ups that have happened, right?
I guess the way that concerns me is just if there was, a situation that arose, and I guess the first thing that would come to mind would be military, which obviously there's excessive spending in the military, but say a situation does arise where they want to make a move or need to make a move because of a disaster or something like that.
Yeah.
But then you have hesitation because they're like, well, can we spend this money?
Well, but also, when you talk about military, you should take a look at our military. Like, our military is number one in the world by quite an extent, as far as size goes, right? So it's like, keeping that operational, there's cost to it. Do we need to expand that size anymore? Or who are we planning to fight? Like,
I don't think we need to expand. I definitely think we need to maintain and progress to an extent, evolve naturally. Yeah. But I don't think expansion is necessary at this point.
But
if anything, our military could be a little smaller.
I think if we made politicians a little bit more accountable for the financial side of politics, of their actions in passing laws, what we would see is, so like right now, it just happens to be true that part of our taxes that go to the national government, part of that money is going to the coal mines in Pennsylvania. Part of that money is going to other different industries, right? And those industries might not be the most efficient. They might not be the most reasonable as far as maintaining them, especially in today's like modern industry or technology, like tech industry that we have. And I think it's kind of unfair that because of like financial reasons or political benefit, they'll write these things into bills. Like, so for something to get passed, say you're a senator from Pennsylvania, right? Mm-hmm. And the vote is coming up and you're like, nope, I'm not going to vote yes on this. And well, what will happen is
they'll put something in there to motivate you.
Yeah, I would be like, well, hey, we could help you out a little bit here, and then you'll change your vote. And I feel like that's a very dirty, backhand way of doing things. No. That's not lobbying. That's pork barreling.
Okay.
Like that is beefing up a bill, right? Like this bill, it could be about guns. It could be about anything.
But then they'll add something that has nothing to do with it. I know that was one of the big issues with Obamacare. Is there's a lot of non-medical related things in that bill.
Right. And what I would like to see for these public, different aspects of public services that we do have, like similar to the mail service, like, there's a lot of operational cost to that, but we have stamps. People pay they help offset the cost of the mail service through paying for stamps. And you don't think that it's a lot of money, but there's still a ton of mail being, exchanged.
Well, and I get 4 or 5 pieces of junk mail every day.
Right. And see, like, there's
it all adds up.
Exactly. And like that is helping offset the cost of that function of the government. And I don't see any problem of like if you support Planned Parenthood, right? Does the government need to be fully funding Planned Parenthood? Why not have a certain part of it where it's like, it's part of it is actually publicly funded, not publicly funded through the government. But if you support that, if you want that aspect in your society, you can donate, you can raise money and give that to that group. And make it more of like a privatized industry.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the government putting a portion of money to it either, just to keep them moving, because they do so much more than just abortions, which is the only thing people care about.
Right, that is true. Yep.
Because they're more about women's health. Right. It's just such a small part of what they do, but it's because it's such a controversial topic, it takes over.
So,
like their image publicly.
Here's a little bit of like kind of an interesting, I guess you could almost say like paradox that I thought of. So the government funds Planned Parenthood, right, which is supposed to educate you on the future of being a parent. Yes. There are certain other aspects dealing with abortions, all of that, but that's not the point of this. Partially is the point, actually. So the government funds that, and then kind of in the same hand, they kind of start to take away sex education in high schools, because I know or in middle schools and high schools. I know at one point in time that was a big deal. I think they got rid of the health class here. I don't know. I'll have to double check on that.
I know when I was in high school, the health class that we had was optional.
Yeah.
The last like health class that was mandatory. I think was in junior high.
Which is to me like that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up really. I mean, like you pay a ton of money for this service that you have to go to like kind of outside of something. Like it should be all of those things should kind of brought up as an educational piece, right? An educational tool when it comes to sexual health and whatever.
But at the same time, you can make the argument that the education system is a failure for the most part. So
true, very, very true. But I mean, like educating people on being prepared for their future when it comes to being a parent, I feel like that's a decent idea. I mean, that's something I would put money towards. But just to kind of bring things back to what we were first talking about, our local government, what I think here in the next few years, as far as the state of North Dakota and the city of Williston, what we'll see is this trend continue of more and more things being cut until somebody actually does an audit and realizes that I think there might be too many people or too many positions that have been created in the last 4 years, and these people are making a lot of money, and they still are maintaining their large paychecks throughout this process, instead of actually cutting their paychecks down.
Well, in the most recent article about the teachers' raises, they brought up something about a $5 million deficit.
Right. I mean, does that make any sense to you when you consider how much money was being exchanged like during the oil boom here?
Well, I mean, it does because you keep bringing up the overextending thing.
Right.
But we've been through a downturn now for 2 years, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
There should have been time to adjust at this point. I could understand when oil took a dump just overnight.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Your money's going to stop flowing.
Right.
You know, you're going to have to readjust.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot tell me that in this 2 years, building this new high school, doing downtown maintenance, or rebuilding the downtown, you didn't plan for this.
Right. Which is weird because I remember I actually went to a couple of the meetings prior to, like right during the beginning of the boom, actually. And there was a lot of talk of making the right choices when it came to using this money wisely, planning for the future, and not overextending. And then it seems like all of that was kind of forgotten about, and that even our city commissioners and our mayor and everybody, they bought into that idea that the boom was going to be here for 30 years. And they just grew everything. They created new positions. They gave pay raises. And now instead of actually cutting all of those things out, right, they're cutting out fundamental aspects of our government. They're asking for more and more taxes. Are we in like a death spiral, or like is this just going to continue on? I mean, what are we going to see? A 10-11% sales tax in Williston in the future just to try and offset things?
I think you would see people lose their mind. There would be protests or something of that nature.
But the big thing is that people need to be a little bit more outspoken about these things, like especially local government.
I think a lot of people don't know what's going on. I mean, how many people do you know that really actually look at the Herald every day or watch local news?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, maybe it's just our age group. I know that there's older people that still pay close attention to these things, but a lot of them too, they don't care, or they're not paying that close of attention. I know a lot of people that do watch the news, they're not even paying attention. It's just background noise.
That's true. I mean, but we need to, that's another kind of aspect of politics and economics and all of that, like that they do try to take into account is that voter like almost voter laziness, right? Where you're just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever happens. It is important to play your own role, to voice your own opinion. Even you've become much more, passionate about politics, and government altogether over the last, 6 months.
I'd say, even in the last year.
Yeah. And it's such a good thing. It's such a powerful tool to actually have, because then when that day comes, like even if, say, just throwing it way out there, if you run for political office in Williston, like you actually have the knowledge, you have the passion, and you would be like a future, commissioner or whatever, and it'd be ideal. It'd be all right for you to actually have that, have that position. let's just hope that everything kind of starts to go back to normal and we don't see things continuing to be cut.
One more point I wanted to make, because it seems like when we started this podcast, the foundation of it was really just built on the anti-social justice movement. We talked about when we were setting up this podcast about the committee for the education system and how it's a great example of how socialism doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. Well, but what, like, are you...
Well, because right now they're just at a standstill. They can't get to an agreement.
Right.
Nobody's getting anywhere. You have this board of people.
Yeah.
And they're just... One side's unwilling to move. You know, the other side's like, hey, we just want a little bit. And nothing gets improved.
Right. Exactly.
To an extent, you could blame that on this $5 million deficit, but that, again, where did the money go?
Right, exactly. So that you do make a very good point. Like, as far as the social aspects, like they're the aspects of socialism, right? And how, like, the education board is a prime example of a social program, right?
Yeah.
You have a very limited few people controlling the functions of this entity. Maybe it's time to, like I said, maybe it's time to have a very serious audit of our local government and see exactly where these finances are going and whether or not those things are appropriate. All right, something doesn't add up, and that would be my final word in this podcast: is things are not adding up when it comes to our local government, and be prepared for some more drama when it comes to the national government this coming week.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost a calm before the storm.
Mm-hmm.
We've had nonstop, just outrageous news articles to talk about, and local and national. It's just been so quiet this week. I feel like something crazy is going to happen soon.
Right. Yep. But I appreciate everyone, hanging out and listening to us for another podcast, and I would really appreciate it if you guys just voiced your thoughts.
Voice your thoughts, share our videos, definitely join the conversation. That is the big thing. Is we've always wanted to create a conversation about these things. These are topics that don't really generally get brought to your attention.
And if you see me out in public, strike up a conversation. I'm down to have a talk about any political thing out there. So
myself included, I'm not above having conversations. I had my first person come up to me since we started the podcast that I didn't even know was a listener, and I was just so taken back that it is starting to get spread around
a little bit. Yeah. Speaking of that, I saw some people wearing our sunglasses that we passed out during the parade. That was pretty cool. Just like yesterday. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and I hope you guys have a great week.
Thank you.